I'm about to take you all on a wild ride as we explore new territory in this episode. I'm Michelle Graham.
And I'm Amanda Washington.
Welcome to The Point of No Return, a Mandy and Mich media production. TPO&R is a true crime podcast that dives into cold cases, murders, and mysteries in various regions. The podcast title serves as a powerful double entendre, symbolizing the irreversible moments for both perpetrators and victims. Once that line is crossed, there's no going back. I have so much to share, so let's get right into it. I scripted this episode out differently than I typically do because I truly wanted to tell a story with this one, so bear with me, please. There's a lot to grasp in this one. I've already warned Amanda a couple of times. We have a lot to get through, and I want to make sure that I'm able to share the full story before we get into conversation. So please cut in as always, as you would like, Mandy, but
okay.
Yeah. Get your notepad ready, grab some snacks, get comfortable, because we're about to get into it.
Okay.
So Steven Donaldson was an oil worker from the town of Kirrimer in Angus, Scotland. So yes, when I say new territory, I mean completely new territory, y'all. We're in Scotland for this episode.
Okay.
So on June 18th, 2017, Steven was introduced to Tasmin Glass at Fife's Knockhill racetrack. Their shared love of motorcycles soon led to a budding romance. Sometime between Christmas 2017 and the spring of 2018, Steven bought Tasmin a Volkswagen Scirocco, and I had to Google this car. It's a real classic, cute-looking Volkswagen car.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and Tasmin is a lady?
Tasmin is a lady, yes. So Steven was feeling her. He bought her a car. They're going steady, right? Soon after getting the car, Tasmin is involved in a collision, totaling it. Naturally, Steven and Tasmin start disputing over insurance money. So he's trying to figure out what's up with the, coverage for the car, and Tasmin ain't got no money yet, okay? Steven wanted Tasmin to pay him for totaling the car, which would have been somewhere between $3,000 to $4,000. Okay? By the way, Tasmin was only 19 years old around this time. So she was likely probably around 18 when she met Steven. Steven was 27 years old.
Okay.
So let's fast forward to June 2018. And I'm going to build a timeline. I'm going to go through various details that I found from articles in The Courier. When I tell y'all, I have never seen coverage of a case like The Courier did of this case. And I don't know if it's because, Scotland's rules of just how outlets are able to cover cases like this, but I had a lot to work with from the onset of this case to every minute detail you can think of what could go on in a case like this. Mm-hmm. So let's build out a timeline. Sometime in early spring 2018, Tasmin entered a sexual relationship with a man named Steven Dickie. For all intents and purposes, I'm going to call Tasmin's new boy toy Dickie, okay? So he had the same name as her original man, Steve.
Okay, so okay? Steven D too.
Yes, but we're going to call him Dickie.
Dickie, all right.
And that's what all the articles, that's what they called him in all the articles as well. So Tasmin and Steven, her original boyfriend, okay, were often arguing about the car situation. And multiple friends of the couple said they were broken up around this time. So in late spring, she starts seeing Dickie. Her and Steven are on the outs. So Dickie had a friend named Callum Davidson. Both the men were 24 years old. So remember I told you Tasmin, little youngin, is only 19. She clearly attracted a little bit of an older crowd because Dickie and Callum, they're 24 years old. On June 6, 2018, Tasmin went swimming in the South Esk River with Dickie, Callum, and Callum's girlfriend, Claire Ogston. Between 9:30 and 11 p.m. that same night, Tasmin's car is captured on CCTV with Callum in the passenger seat. So her new boy toy's best friend. We can assume this is not the car she already totaled. Clearly, Tasmin got herself a new ride in the time she totaled her last car that Steven got her in now. And we're in June 2018, remember? So Tasmin and Callum went to go pick up a baseball bat from his uncle's house. Soon after that, the same car is seen at Peter Pan Play Park in Kirrimer. So Tasmin contacts Steven and tells him to meet her at the park to discuss their relationship and to, put to bed this money dispute. She wanted to pay him off. She apparently had made some small payments to him, leading up to this moment, but still owed Steven some money on the car.
While she's in the car with Callum.
With Callum, and yes. So it was obviously some sort of setup, but Steven went anyways, thinking he was meeting up with Tasmin. In my mind, when I read this, I'm like, why would you agree to meet your ex-girlfriend in the park at night? Of all places y'all could have met up. And from what I got from this area, it was a very small town. I'll tell you a little bit more about the town as the story goes on.
And Dickie is not there.
Right now, Dickie is not a part of the story.
Okay.
She's with Callum. So I am just baffled that you would agree. I'm sorry, ex-boyfriend, current boyfriend. You tell me to meet you in the park at nighttime, I'm straight. I'm going to see you in the daylight, or we're going to go to a public place. It just didn't make any sense to me. Tasmin conspired with Dickie and Callum to lure Steven to a secluded location, obviously. Just after 11 p.m., Dickie shows up. So does Steven, and so do Callum. So Callum and Dickie show up around the same time Steven does to the park together, and they ambush Steven and attack him in his BMW. So stay with me. I know you have a lot of questions. I'm about to lay out what I know about what happened in this moment. So Steven suffered severe injuries, including blunt force trauma and multiple stab wounds. Dickie stabbed him multiple times while Callum was hitting him with the bat. Dickie and Callum then transported Steven to the Kennedy Nature Reserve, where the attack escalated. During the second attack, Steven's spinal cord was severed. To try to cover up their tracks, the perpetrators set Steven's body and his BMW on fire. So sometime during the attack in the nature reserve, Steven tries to flee, but Dickie and Callum catch him, drag him back to his car where he's lit on fire. So Dickie and Callum proceed to walk home. They are caught on camera, CCTV, around 12:49 a.m., so this is rolling into June 7th, crossing the road near the town's health center. An hour later, around 1:58 a.m., Callum is seen on CCTV casually cycling through the town center back towards the nature reserve. So for some reason, he goes back towards the crime scene. At the time, it's unclear what he's doing, but we'll come back to this detail. Nature reserve workers discovered Steven's charred and dismembered body alongside his burnt car around 4:50 a.m. on the 7th. At 8 a.m. on June 7th, Tasmin shows up for work as normal at Lee's Cafe and Takeaway. She goes on to attend her weekly singing lesson later that day. Early that evening, Dickie, Callum, and Claire go for tea. Remember, Claire is Callum's girlfriend. They go for tea at a local hotel to obviously discuss their stories and alibis for the police. I just gave you a lot to work with before I move on, because we're going to get into some police discussions. Tasmin was busy in 2018. I left this little detail out, but she moves away from the town that her and Steven were living in at the time that she told us the car, to some town called Gaslow. Please excuse me. I'm not too well versed in Scotland, but this was somewhere between 20 to 30 miles from the town she was living in with Steven.
So she basically has two boyfriends at the same time.
Two boyfriends, new car, moves out of the town her and Steven were in.
Yeah. And
now she's booed up and kicking it with Dickie, Callum, and his girl Claire. Often.
Okay. So then one night, the couples are hanging out.
Earlier in the day on the 6th, the couples are hanging out. Dickie, Tasmin,
and Tasmin,
Claire, and Callum.
Yes. And so then Tasmin and Callum go to Callum's uncle's house and get a bat.
Yes.
Then Tasmin
hits
and Callum,
Yes, Tasmin hits up Steven.
Tasmin hits up Steven, says, hey, yo, come meet me at the park. Where they met at? Okay, come meet me at the park. And he like, all right, bet. So she meets up with him. Is Callum still in the car with her at this time?
Yes. So she tells Steven that, hey, she texts him actually and says, hey, come meet me at the park. I want to discuss our relationship. And she had the intentions of paying him back the money. That's the impression that Steven is under when he shows up to the park, yet he is met with Callum and Dickie. It's unclear if Steven and Tasmin didn't speak. It's unclear if Steven saw Tasmin, but I know for a fact Tasmin saw Steven, and I'll get there when we get to trial.
Okay. And so was Tasmin there during this entire attack?
I'll tell you at trial.
Okay.
Right now, you don't know that yet.
And where was Claire when all of this was happening?
Claire was not there. She was not a part of the attack. But she She did know
But she
about it.
knew.
She did know about it. But obviously, in my mind, Claire wasn't there, so she could be part of their alibi.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming you're going to tell me what happened when Callum went back to the nature reserve.
Yes. We'll get there.
Okay.
Okay. And we're going to get to the trial very quickly because all three of them have different accounts of what went down. Obviously, you know how
And
that
how
goes.
long did it take them to get caught and, like, for the police to put the pieces together and all that? Come on, cut to the chase.
This is a perfect segue. So on June 8th, the day after the attack, Callum gives a statement to the police. He said
Why?
It was easily why was it Callum that gave a statement to the police? Obviously quickly Steven was linked back to Tasmin as, you know, his current partner. Tasmin was linked to Dickie and Callum as she was hanging out with them the day before. So they all spoke to the police, but it was Callum's statement that stuck out. So I'm gonna say his statement, and then we go easily hop into trial, because after you hear what happened, you'll be like, oh, okay. Okay. So Callum gives a statement to police. He says him and Dickie were at home watching TV and drinking beers during the time Steven was murdered. That alibi fell apart very quickly, because by June 14th, less than a week later, Dickie, Callum, and Tasmin are all arrested for the murder of Steven. So the detective who led the investigation said it was one of the most brutal attacks he had ever encountered. This was Detective Superintendent Andy Patrick. He told the BBC that authorities had an idea that Tasmin was involved from an early stage. They jumped on that from jump. Once detectives connected Dickie, Callum, and Tasmin together, after they originally spoke to Tasmin, then they spoke to Dickie, spoke to Callum, it all started to make sense how they were all connected to each other. So the trio pled not guilty to first-degree murder and all of the other charges. So I'm going to tell you the other charges. They aren't directly related to this case, but there were a handful of them, and they were only for Dickie and Callum. So both Dickie and Callum were accused of threatening two men over several years by following them on foot and by car and making repeated threats. Again, the pair allegedly abused a kitten by placing it in a bag, swinging it around, and punching and kicking it in Fife back in 2017. So again, for Dickie and Callum, charges, they were charged with stalking and threatening a man in Carramore with weapons over a 3-month period. Again, another charge for Dickie and Callum. They allegedly followed and intimidated a woman and kicked her car between 2017 and early 2018 in Carramore. So, another charge for Callum. He was accused of assaulting a man by pushing him to the floor and threatening to punch him in a house. Another charge for Dickie. He allegedly assaulted a woman at a pub by grabbing her wrist and neck and threatening her with violence.
What did Tasmanian devil? What did she want with these fools?
Trouble. It sounds like trouble. Sounds like she went to the two right people to get done whatever she wanted to get done. And that's all I'm gonna say right now, because we still got a lot to get through. Okay.
There's more.
I wanted to tell you, no, those were the charges, but I'm going to start getting into the interrogation, investigation, and the trial.
Okay. Because I'm sickened.
Those charges, I wanted to start building out the type of people that we're dealing with here, right, with Dickie and Callum.
Okay.
So Dickie told police during a 5.5-hour interrogation that he didn't touch Steven. Okay? He told police he saw Callum carry out the beating and that he was near a pathway in the park during the full attack. Steven said Callum used some sort of bat with a sharp object attached to the end of it. An autopsy later revealed that Steven's cause of death to be deep chopping wounds around the base of his neck, which twice severed his spinal cord. Pathologists recorded 26 stab wounds on his body. Detectives would later find blood on the handle grips of Callum's mountain bike. That bike he was riding at night, back to the nature reserve. Yeah, that one. This is the one he was riding through the town center literally an hour after the murder happened. So let's get into the trial. So Tasmin, Dickie, and Callum's trial began on April 1st, 2019 at the High Court in Edinburgh before Lord Pentland and a judge of 8 men and 7 women. I don't know why I was so excited to say that part. I'm like, Scotland's legal system is just so formal, so formal. And yes, when I looked at the picture, girl, they had them wigs on with the curls in it.
Yeah. That's fun.
They really had that. Really had that. Okay. So all 3 of the accused took stand during trial as well, which I think is crazy. In this gruesome of a case, y'all shouldn't be talking about anything. Like, let the facts speak. If anything, I would have told my lawyer, my lips are sealed. Like, you got me. Because when I tell you they got up on the stand and acted fool, they got up on the stand and acted a fool. Throughout the trial, though, all of the charges except the murder charge for Steven were dropped. So all of those charges I told you about against Callum and Dickie, they're all dropped. And I'm pretty sure the prosecution did this to really focus on the one charge at hand.
Okay.
And a lot of these charges came by way of witnesses and just different people stepping forward to take the stand throughout the trial. You know, you want to build out character against these people. I found so many transcripts and court records about this case, but let me highlight a few things before I tell you how this case really ended up. Experts examined 4,000 pages of text messages between Steven and Tasmin. 4,000 pages. I don't know what point font or whatever was on each page, but 4,000 pages of text messages feel egregious. Maybe I don't chat enough, but you knew this man for a year, and for some of those months, y'all probably wasn't even chatting as much because you were over there under Dickie. 4,000 pages of text messages?
Between Steven and Tasmin.
And Tasmin, yes. Dickie testified that Tasmin put Callum up to the murder. When I tell you, Dickie said, hands up, like this was them two evils.
Like, Callum, that wasn't even your lady.
It wasn't your lady, but let me tell you more. So Dickie said he thought
Unless she was breaking him off too.
Listen to the story.
All right.
Dickie said he thought Callum was going to go with Tasmin to meet Steven, only to roughen him up and tell him to back off. So Tasmin, it seems like in this scenario, Tasmin painted a picture to painted a picture to Callum and Dickie that Steven was harassing her about the money. She wanted to be left alone. She was clearly trying to move forward with Dickie. That's what Dickie's saying. And clearly, in all of the scenarios, Callum is an aggressor. And all of the evidence I'm about to give you in just case facts, like, clearly Callum was the one who was roughing people up.
Yeah.
So Steven was like, yeah, she went to Callum because he's the bad boy. He's the abuser. He went with her to go rough a boy up, and tell him to back off. So he then jumped in the car with Tasmin, and they allegedly, so he said, Steven was supposed to be coming to, the park to meet Tasmin. Callum was supposed to pull up with her, roughing him up, and all of that. The way Dickie explains the story is Tasmin is there the entire time in her car. In another account, you'll also hear from Callum that Tasmin was there at the beginning of the attack. The way Dickie says it is, Callum got a little bit too happy with the bat, starts attacking Steven, and he jumps in the car with Tasmin, and they allegedly sped off. So he said he did not stay for the attack. He doesn't know what had gotten into Callum. He said it looks like Callum saw red and started beating Steven to death. Dickie said he then went to Callum's house, and he didn't get back. He went back to Callum's house and waited for Callum to get there, but Callum didn't get back to the house until an hour and a half later. When asked if he thought Steven was dead, Dickie said, no, not at all. I just thought that Callum, gave him a really bad beating, but I didn't stay to see it. That's what he said.
That's what Dickie's saying.
Dickie testified that he later testified that Callum rode back to the crime scene on his bike to look for the broken baseball bat used to assault Steven. So he said he don't know what got into Callum, but Callum went back to get the baseball bat after all of that had happened. In my mind, if y'all set the boy on fire, or allegedly from Dickie's story, if Callum set him on fire, why wasn't the bat set on fire as well? Because if he was looking for a broken bat, that gives me that it was a wooden bat.
Yeah, and when y'all just beat him so bad, like when he tried to flee, y'all should have just let him go. Instead like when he tried to flee, y'all wanted to kill him. Y'all also set him on fire. At what point did you think that he was escaping that? I'm confused.
Exactly.
You never thought that he was alive. Stop fucking around.
In Dickie's eyes, he was like, I wasn't there. Like, I don't know what got into Callum. Callum went nuts, right?
Yeah.
Well, Callum got up on that stand and testified that Dickie started the attack by stabbing Steven. So here are two things we know are true. We know that Steven experienced some sort of blunt force trauma, and we know that he was stabbed multiple times. So in these two men's accounts, there is definitely some blunt force trauma, and there's definitely some stabbing.
Correct.
In Dickie's story, he said there was something sharp attached to the end of the bat. So he's trying to tell us that Callum both beat him with the bat and stabbed him with the bat. And in Callum's story, he's saying that Dickie started the attack by stabbing Steven with something. Okay? Callum said he punched Steven once before Dickie pushed him out of the way to continue his stabbing frenzy. What do you think of that story? He was like, yeah, I tried to get in there and get some action, but Dickie was too happy with the knife, pushed me out of the way, and it was like, let me get mine.
To be honest, Mich, I don't know what the fuck to believe. I don't know what to believe.
Out?
I'm very stressed, but what I do know is the cause of death was the stabbing to the neck. I don't believe it was no sharp object on the end of that bat. I do think that they beat the shit out of him with that bat that Callum had, and clearly Callum had the bat because it came from his uncle's house. Now, they probably started out swinging and did whatever, so maybe Callum started out with the bat, and then Dickie came in with the knife, and I think the knife probably took it up to the next level, and honestly, the one who saw red might have been Dickie, to be honest. Callum might have went out there like, all right, yeah, I'm about to beat you with this bat real quick, beat the brakes off you, scare you, spook you, do some crazy shit, and beat you to a pulp. And then Dickie might have been like, well, I'm not gonna stand out here and look scary, so let me up the ante, and let's get a little stab going.
Yeah, and it's crazy. In Callum's story, he doesn't bring up a bat at all. I'm like, was it? But we know there was some sort of object there, and I'll get to that detail. But let me tell you this part. Callum said he was so angry and sad with Dickie about what happened because the attack wasn't meant to go that far. In his mind, they weren't there to kill Steven. And I'm like, what I was conflicted with is, I'm like, ugh. From this point of view, like, this story makes sense to me, right? That the current boyfriend was upset that the ex-boyfriend was essentially harassing his girlfriend, and he wanted to get him about the way. And Callum, as his homeboy, was like, I'm with you. Let's go rough him up. Yeah. And then they get there, and Dickie sees red. I believe that that's how it could have went down. Yep. But I have more details to share with you.
Okay.
Callum said Dickie was, guilt tripping him into staying quiet about the murder because of his girlfriend. So Callum also said as part of his story, they ended up back at his house and that they were having discussions about what went down. And he said Dickie was guilt tripping me because his girlfriend Claire was pregnant with his child. Claire was pregnant. Claire later gave birth to Callum's child in January 2019. So both men testified that Tasmin drove off in her car as soon as the attack started. Now, the details of who was in the car with her or who wasn't, still very foggy. And let me tell you, I didn't even get clarity from Tasmin's testimony about if someone left with her in the car or not. It's giving no one left with her in the car. She sped off as soon as the attack started because she needed to start her alibi and she needed to get back to her parents' house. So Tasmin went back to her parents' house that night, and the next day, like I said, she carried on. She went to work early that morning, went to her singing lessons as normal, and all of that. We'll get into more details about her communication with surrounding friends and family. So, Tasmin's friend, Paige Jolly, testified that Tasmin said she was going to pay Steven back for the car. So, Tasmin told Paige she was going to transfer some money to her mom's account so her mom could handle repaying Steven without her having to meet up with him directly. So, this is what she told her homegirl, Paige. After you have now told multiple people, and I'll get to the multiple people, that you were meeting up with him that night, Steven, that night, to pay him the money. But now you told your homegirl that you were going to give the money to your mom to give to him so you don't have to see him directly. But get this, Paige also knew Dickie and Callum. Paige told the court that she dated Dickie for a short period of time, so she got to know Callum as well. Before getting with Dickie, Paige was dating a man named Philip Coventry. I love the last name. Like, the names are very interesting to me. But Paige and Philip broke up, and they did not end on good terms, right? Mm-hmm. So when she was just yapping to Callum after, about her ex, by this point, she's dating Dickie now. So she's yapping to Callum about her ex and how they just didn't end on good terms. Paige says that Callum told her that he could sort Philip out if she gave him $500. This is what she testified. Paige
so he do murder for hire.
That's what is given to me. Paige said she was shocked by Callum's offer, but clearly not shocked enough because she never reported him to the police. This is the first time she's publicly saying something about this. So back to my point that when Callum got up
and
on
for
that stand,
$500, Callum is cheap work.
well, you think Philip is cheap work. Did you even know him? Like, you don't know what this... For all I know, you don't know what his build was. You don't know what he looked like. You don't know what he was packing. You don't know who he knew. You don't know his friends. You don't know his family. But you was like, yeah, I'll get him up off you for 500. 500?
500 is crazy.
It's giving you've done this before. That's what I took this as well. It's giving you...
Or that you enjoy it.
It's giving you enjoy it, but it's also giving... You probably have done this before, and you've probably succeeded at it. What your level of success is you've gotten somebody off, received some money, and there were no, legal action taken after that, right? Back to when I told you I thought Callum's story on the stand could have made sense because Dickie is Tasmin's boyfriend. I'm like, and then you got Paige up here fried you. You should have known Paige was coming. Did you forget that your homeboy dated Tasmin's friend? But also I'm wondering, did you meet Dickie through your homegirl, Tasmin?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, like, this is a throwback. You remember when Ray J used to have that love show, and that girl Danger was on there, and
yes.
Danger, she smashed the homies. That's literally what I thought of. Like, immediately, my mind went to that Danger. She smashed the homies. I'm like, are you on to everybody, babe? What's going on? And are people not concerned for their health?
And allegedly, like, obviously, like, if her homegirl dated him, like, when Tasmin started dating Dickie, that obviously wasn't her first encounter with him, right? It also was said in court that Dickie and Callum were familiar with Steven. They weren't friends with him, but they were familiar with him as in they used to see Tasmin around town with Steven, with her man. So I'm like, y'all were clearly, this was the type of town where somebody was familiar with somebody who was familiar with somebody. Mm-hmm. But let me get back to the testimony. So Tasmin was allegedly trying to get pregnant with Steven in the months before his murder. So Tasmin also was trying to get pregnant, and here's how I know that. Steven's friend Martin.
But how long was she dating Steven for to even try and get pregnant by him?
Why you keep saying that? I told you. She met Steven July 2017. By spring, they're fighting. The car's totaled. But all in the midst of this, she wants to get pregnant by him. But yes, we know she's got a new car, moved to a new town, and is now messing with Dickie.
Okay, I keep saying that because I'm just flabbergasted. I'm like,
all of this has happened in this short time.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not that long.
Okay, but you're going to be shocked to hear the next couple of details.
And she's young.
So Steven's friend, Martin Johnstone, testified that Tasmin believed having a child would bring her and Steven closer. Steven went on to tell his friend Martin that he thought Tasmin was pregnant already. I'll come back around to this in a second. I just wanted to plant that bug. Another friend of Steven's, John Ryan, testified that he saw Steven a few hours before he was killed. Steven told John all about the car situation and the money, but he was really stressed that he was really stressed out. He was expressing that he was stressed out and that he was interested in figuring out where his relationship with Tasmin was going to go. He wanted to still be with her. So Steven was supposed to text John the next day and tell him about what happened with the conversation with Tasmin. But of course, John never heard from him. Mm-hmm. When John hit up Tasmin to see if she had heard from Steven, to see if they got to link up last night, Tasmin told him that Steven was supposed to come see her the night before, but that he didn't show up. So you've now told multiple different stories to multiple people. So you told this person that Steven was supposed to meet you last night and he didn't show up. You told your homegirl Paige that you were giving some money to your mom to give to Steven because you didn't want to meet, you didn't want to see him. So what was going on?
Yeah, it's hard to keep up at this point.
Exactly. So Tasmin said she thought Steven had fallen asleep. After Steven's body was found, Tasmin called and texted friends expressing shock and heartbreak. Martin said Tasmin seemed worried about Steven in the beginning, but then her worry faded, and he said he automatically felt like something was wrong. So Martin said he was texting Tasmin in the 2 days, in the 2 days right after the crime had happened. They found his body the next morning, but it seems like he wasn't actually identified as Steven until like a day or two later. So in those days, Tasmin was texting Martin a lot. She was talking about how she was worried sick. She hadn't heard from him. Now a body is found in the nature reserve, and she was worried. And then once he's identified, it's like she forgot to keep up the facade, because Martin was like, she flipped a switch and, she wasn't as concerned or sad as she was playing to be in the first couple of days he had spoken to her.
But my question is, didn't they know that she was dating Dickie at the time? So why would she really be giving this much of a damn about what Steven had going on?
It doesn't seem like her relationship with Dickie is as public as it became when the case came out. It seems like it became more public once the case came out. But leading up until this point, like looking at some of the text message exchanges, her and Steven was arguing or texting every day.
Got it. Okay.
Like multiple times a day. It seemed, and also I got to remind you, where she was hanging out with Dickie and his crew of friends wasn't in the town that her and Steven were bopping around to.
Yes.
It was
okay.
close.
Thank you for the reminder. You're right.
Yes, it was close enough that Dickie and Callum were familiar with the people of this town, but not that they were kicking it in that town. And from my knowledge, looking at Steven's like text messages with Tasmin, he was not thinking about her being with somebody else. Like he was literally like, "This is my girl. We're going through it, and like we're gonna figure it out." And like he was even complaining at one point, like, "I've barely heard from you," and he was like, "I'm trying." He was like pleading with her. He was like, "I'm trying to figure this relationship out. I'm hearing from you less and less." And then you move to another town. He was like, "You're not trying to figure this out." You know what I mean? In my mind, Steven was very much so still in the relationship. And it's not that Tasmin was checked out, but she obviously was focusing on her sexual relationship with Dickie. So, and also
Dick from Dickie.
Once this trial was underway, it's like Dickie and Tasmin wasn't ever in cahoots. Like, they was acting like, from what they both said, like, they were like, we were just having sex. Like, we were kicking it, we were having sex. And I'm like, how do you get to murder for hire with someone you're just having sex with? I'm not saying you give that job to someone that you're really in love with or in a relationship with, but y'all wouldn't even type like that if Dickie was blowing the casket on his first interview saying, Tasmin and Callum did it, I had nothing to do with it, I was just effing the girl. You know what I mean? Like, it's bizarre. Also, multiple witnesses who testified that Steven was more focused on the relationship than the money Tasmin ever owed him. Yet Tasmin was bringing up this money so often, and it was weird to me because I'm like, why are you so wrapped up and focused on the debt if Steven wasn't? Like, multiple friends got up on the stand and said that Steven was ready to let the money go and figure out his relationship with Tasmin. They were like, he wasn't bringing up that money that she owed. And yet, in my mind, one thing I did not find throughout all of this was the motive of why Tasmin would set her boyfriend up, or ex-boyfriend. And I'll get to that. We'll get to that when we talk a little bit more about theories.
Okay.
So, like I said, something isn't adding up. And honestly, Tasmin's testimony and her speaking on the stand confused me more than anybody else's. So, Tasmin testified that her and Steven were planning to move to Qatar together to start a new life. She said Steven had been offered a new job there, and they were considering moving in the midst of them going back and forth. So, again, why would you move to another town and start effing another man if you were focused on trying to
move to another country?
Yes. So, she also told the court that at one point in time, Steven slapped her in the past, like slapped her in the face, and that he was often using steroids, which is why they were also often fighting, arguing, getting into physical altercations, breaking up. She was trying to describe that they had a very toxic relationship. But at the end of it, she said they both wanted to maintain the relationship and had no plans to break up permanently. Tasmin testified that she never saw Steven the night that he was killed. She denied seeing the bat that Callum picked up from his uncle's place, but did confirm that she did take him to his uncle's place. He picked up something, but she doesn't know what it was. So,
why did you do this, Tasmin?
We'll get to that in a second. So, Tasmin's mother, Mandy Glass, testified in court that her daughter told her that she still loves Steven hours after his body was found. She was so heartbroken about him being dead. She was crying. She was hysterical and said she was so in love with him. But it was awkward to me the way her mom said it, that she was still in love with him. Well, at this time, you should have, what do you mean? You don't need to confirm that you're still in love with him because you were actively in love with him, right? This was your man. Like, of course you would feel, horrible that he was found dead. Tasmin's parents said they asked her once if she was involved in Steven's murder. She told them no, and they have always believed her. So her parents went through this trial and have, believed that she was innocent the entire time. So back to Tasmin allegedly wanting a baby. So Tasmin was pregnant around the time that Steven was murdered. She gave birth to a baby boy since being charged with Steven's murder. Her son was 13 weeks old and being cared for by her mother at the time of the trial. Which means, if I do the calculations right, if Claire had her baby in January, Tasmin had her baby maybe a month later. So, all the while she was, running off into the sunset doing whatever she was doing with Dickie last summer, she was pregnant. But what I will tell you is, Tasmin will say that kid is Steven's. We don't know who's the father of that kid.
That baby could be Dickie's kid for all we know.
100%. 100%.
But yet and still, you did all of this. You were in love with this man, allegedly. But what did you do this for?
What did you do this for? What did you do this for? So
what did you do this for?
Let me tell you a little bit about the verdict.
Go ahead. I'm pissed off.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I told you it was a lot. Okay, so the trial lasted about a month, with the conclusion coming on May 3rd, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So after 9 hours of deliberation, the jury found Tasmin, Callum, and Dickie guilty of killing Steven. Dickie and Callum were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with minimum terms of 23 and 24 years, respectively. So Dickie got 23 years, Callum got 24 years. I was saying respectively, so the 23 was for Dickie and the 24 was for Callum. But
okay.
Tasmin's charge, on the other hand, changed. She was convicted of culpable homicide. Do you know what culpable homicide is?
I don't. Would you mind telling me what that is, Miss Chalet?
I would love to. So culpable homicide is the unlawful killing of a person without the specific intent to kill, falling short of murder in jurisdictions like Scotland, South Africa, and India. So I didn't know what this was either, and it's likely because we don't have this in America.
Mm-hmm.
So a culpable murder charge is equivalent to manslaughter, which to me is not true in this case.
No, she had a hand in his murder. She's a murderer.
100%. But
she set him up.
A conviction of this nature only gets a sentence of 10 years. So Tasmin was only sentenced to 10 years in prison. Which is strange to me because even Detective Andy Patrick said Steven's murder could not have happened without Tasmin setting it up. And even if she didn't set it up, she's the glue. These two men would not have been connected to Steven without her. If I was his family, I would be throwing up, throwing a fit. Y'all wouldn't stop hearing from me. It gets worse.
And then the fact that her family gets to raise that kid.
Oh, it gets worse.
Hand that baby over.
You're going to be upset. So strap in. In November of 2019, Callum and Tasmin tried to appeal their convictions and sentences, but were both denied. Dickie, on the other hand, the same week that Tasmin and Callum tried to, go for appeals, Dickie was found dead in his cell on November 15th, 2019. So it's unclear if he killed himself. It's unclear how he died. The details of his death were never released. But Dickie is found dead. So he spent, May, June, July, August, September, October, 6 months in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So Callum's 24-year sentence was later extended by 5 months after he was caught with prison contraband. Not once, not twice, but 4 times.
I wonder what he had.
They wouldn't tell me, girl. I wanted to know so bad. I'm like, was it a drug? Was it some liquor?
Some hooch?
What was it? But it doesn't end there. So, Tasmin was granted parole in July 2024, only serving half of her 10-year sentence in prison. Yes, my heart broke. But in order to get released, she had to follow certain conditions, including never contacting Steven's family. She was also banned from entering a few cities in Scotland, including Angus and Dundee, which are the areas that Steven's family lived in. Steven's family described the news of Tasmin's release as a disaster. They're heartbroken. Tasmin moved to a town called East Lothian, where she was often seen and photographed throughout the town. Everybody knew who she was. They knew that she was, involved in Steven's death. And y'all, the headlines on these articles, not even just in Scotland, but for some reason, Yahoo News took an interest in covering Tasmin's case. A lot of the headlines were like, boyfriend killer, Tasmin Glass, released on parole or whatever. Literally every headline from Yahoo, boyfriend killer, boyfriend killer. And I know they're probably syndicating the article from somewhere in Scotland, but I'm like, this is just it's too much for me. Locals were furious in this new town, of Tasmin coming around. They didn't want to see her around for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And they especially didn't want to see her around their schools and their kids. So Tasmin was often photographed at an, elementary school / daycare center is what it looked like. She's often seen smiling, and I'm assuming she's there with her kid. Because at this point, her kid is, what, 6 years old? Well, Tasmin's freedom didn't last long. She was sent back to prison in April of this year, of 2025, for unknown reasons. But by law in Scotland, Tasmin will be immediately reconsidered for parole, and Steven's family has until April 28th to make submissions against her release. When I tell you, this sent me into a spiral because I'm like, what is going on with Scotland's legal system? You're telling me she's returned to prison, and to me, the likely only reason is she violated her parole.
Mm-hmm.
Why else would she be sent back to prison? If she got conditions, which I only gave you one condition, which is she has to stay away from Steven's family, but, also, taking into account that her own family probably lives in these towns near Steven's family, so maybe she was seen in town, like, with her family, maybe she got caught, maybe it's something of that nature, but Steven's family seems very unsettled by this and getting involved in at all, submitting any type of, plea to not let her out because they don't even know why she was sent back to prison in the first place. So they want to know, was she caught around our home? Was she seen in our town? Was she,
what's the
visiting Steven's grave? What actually are we fighting against? They're kind of scared. They're like, why was she sent back? Like, we're dealing with a criminal here. Let us know. So.
I'm weak. You were right. As soon as I typed in her name, the first thing that popped up was Yahoo News boyfriend killer.
and you probably see that smiling photo of her. But yeah, take a look at my boy Steven. Callum and Dickie are just as scary looking as you think they would be. They're husky men, like they're big husky men, and Steven just looks so sweet. And
he was handsome.
Mm-hmm. Going through all of he looks like a sweet boy, and going through all of the text messages, it's like, damn, like at no point in time reading the messages did I think that he was never not in love with Tasmin. It was obvious to me that he loved this woman. He, had no impression that she was seeing another man. Like, he wasn't even on none of that. Like, all Steven was on was trying to get with her. And it's like, she seems like she, to me, Tasmin, guilted herself into thinking that, Steven was, so hung up on this money because she was hung up on the money she owed him that she, like, mentally just drowned herself into believing that the only way to not owe him the money was to kill him. Like, even if you didn't want to give him the money, like $3-4 grand to me is not enough money to be offing somebody about.
It's not.
No enough money to me is enough money to be offing somebody about. Because honestly, I've convinced myself that money's not real. That's how I live my life.
But $3,000? No.
I pay what I gotta pay. I get out the way, and there's no amount of money in this world that can stress me out. Like, them student loans, they might get paid, they might not. Like,
they might not.
Because, honey, if she was offing Steven over $4 grand, then Advantage need to come see me. I got $4 grand times a lot.
Callum charging less than that?
The bar is very low. The bar is lower than low. My thing is what pisses me off about Callum is you had no business. You had no business. Because even if you take death out of the situation, right? Like, even if you take the murder out of the situation, if anybody was going with Tasmin to link up with her ex, it's her new man. Like, roughing him up can come in words. Y'all have to put hands on this man. But also, Tasmin was lying. How about that? Did y'all ever consider that she was lying about who Steven was and how he was treating her? Like, Dickie would even testify. Tasmin told him that she was going to link up with Steven. He was like, I wasn't threatened. I wasn't in no way, shape, or form, because he was like, you know, we had more of a sexual relationship, and I wasn't threatened by Steven. So when she wanted Callum to go, you know, roughing him up for harassing her or whatever, he was like, I let him have it because it wasn't nothing to me. I wasn't threatened by him.
And this is, to me, like, just a very clear example of, like, when people just think that they're, like, so rough and tough and, like, they have a point to prove, how things can just, like, escalate so quickly. This reminds me of, do you remember when we were watching I Am a Killer on Netflix? And this mirrors that one episode very closely, when those people were prank calling that couple, and they went out to that random field, and that lady was out there, and she was like, I didn't do anything, and it was like her husband and the son, and then they beat the little boy in the middle of in that field.
It was like, y'all took it too far.
Yes, and it was just like, why did y'all do all of that? And it was like, oh, we didn't know them. And it was like, well, we only hit them. And then it was like, no, y'all beat the hell out of him.
Y'all beat the hell out of him, and y'all ran him over with your truck. And there were multiple of y'all. And I'm like, don't even get me back on that case, because to this day, I don't know why them boys showed up to that park and met up with them people.
Yeah, like, why did you do that?
And like, going back to my point of
Steven,
why would you link up? But here, in Steven's defense, I would never believe the person I love is about to set me up.
Yep.
I would never. And I'm like, and maybe that's like my naiveness, but like reading those messages, like even Tasmin's responses, it's like she had Steven on the defense. It was like Steven was begging to get back with her. Like, it was obvious that Tasmin was pulling away. He was obviously like making his case to be with her. And he was like, we just need to sit down and figure this out. And I guess every time like he said something, maybe that triggered something in her, and she assumed that he was gonna, you know, be wanting the money back or ask about the money or whatever that may be. But you also, after his death, are, you know, claiming that you're in love with him, still love him, and now you're the mother of his child. What I want to know is why Steven's family, if they haven't yet, this wasn't a part of any of the research that I did, to run a DNA test on that baby.
Yeah.
Because at this point, now that Dickie's dead, it's like, if Steven's, you know, not the father, then Dickie's family could get involved and figure out if this baby, poor child. That's all I gotta say is poor child.
Yeah, this is traumatic.
So traumatic. Even thinking of Callum's kid, like.
And poor Claire.
Like, by the time, yes, poor Claire, but also can't forget that Claire very well could have known.
Could have been in this too. Yep.
Like,
complicit.
Very well could have, which is, if this was America, she definitely would have been an accomplice, right? To murder, like, depending on if, you know, what her, how much she was involved in the alibi situation. Because remember, I told you they all linked up the next day.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess she very well could have been like pinned as, what's the word? I'm having a brain fart today, but they didn't need. Yeah, they didn't need.
Like they didn't even need that. Her to plug this together. So I'm like, for all we know, she could have had a story.
If it would have been like a long time, but it seems like they put two and two together very quickly. So they didn't. Yeah, they didn't need her to be, you know, like, oh, she lied to the police, so they didn't need that, because they was on their ass very quickly.
Absolutely. So what do you think of all the details I told you? What do you think the main motive in this could have been? Because easily I want to go to, she didn't want to pay him back the money, but from all the people who testify, he wasn't worried about the money. And that just, like, throws me off. And she was in court talking about she loved him. When I tell you I'm baffled, Amanda, like, this sounds like a case of, like, to me, like, this woman just, you know, mentally, like, drowned herself out with all of the things she thought was reality and weren't reality. Like, and also she was so young.
I think she's a liar.
Yeah.
I think she's a sociopathic liar.
Okay, yeah. Felt that.
I think she's a sociopathic liar. I don't think she loved him. I think she was immature and immaturely wanted a baby. I think that he was a little more mature than her. He had the age on her, and maybe he did want a kid and wanted something more serious with her, and he was willing to put, you know, the bullshit to the side. But I think the maturity thing was a little off with them, and maybe he saw the potential there, and she was playing games, you know, and she was You got a man, but you're effing around. She was out there in the streets. She wanted to do what she wanted to do. So, like, she was doing it for the plot, is what I think. Honestly, she did some shit for the plot. So, she had Steven, and she knew that Steven was down for her. Steven would do anything for her, and did anything for her. I don't think she cared anything about that money or anything like that. She didn't give a damn. She was never giving him the money back, obviously. And she was like, he's annoying. He's never going to leave me alone. Like, let's, like, she probably did it. She knew those two other guys were menaces. She probably was like, let's call him out there and let's fuck with him or something. Like,
yeah, for sure.
It'll be funny.
I see that for sure. And
like,
then they was like, yeah, I got you. I'm going to fuck with him, all right.
Yeah, like, we're bored. Like, yeah, let's do it.
Like, in these situations, I really am like, and in these small towns, I'm like, they had the CCTV, but I'm like, I would pay to be a fly on the wall that night when they pulled up on Steven. Because from what I know, they pulled him out the car. Like, he was still in the BMW. Like, boy didn't even get out the car before they were lodging into the car to start beating him. And then eventually he was out of the car. And I'm like, that, and then y'all move him to another area. It sounds like they got in the car, drove it to another place. Remember, they started at a park and ended up in the nature reserve. What I didn't look at is how far apart those two things were, but they definitely moved his car. But I'm like, what was the conversation, if any at all? Or did y'all just get straight to it?
In the overkill.
Right.
Like, y'all have already beaten him, stabbed him, severed his spine, and then now you have to burn him?
Yeah, and I'm like, y'all were better off to me burning his body and moving the car somewhere else, like separating the two. Because I'm like, I'm not sure what was used to identify him, but he was identified rather quickly, and I'm assuming maybe a license plate.
It was probably
type
that
of
car. Yeah,
I'm like, to me that was the
cars
identifier.
don't burn easy, and even if they do, I'm like, that VIN number.
Yeah,
like, cars are easily identifiable, even if they are burned to a crisp. Like,
it's too much. And I'm thinking back to when she had to, around the time she had to conceive. So based on the loose timeline in my head of her baby being 13 weeks and, this all happening in June of last year, she had to be anywhere between maybe 4 to 6 weeks pregnant. And I'm just thinking back to the conversation that Steven had with his friend Martin of saying like, oh, I think she was pregnant already. And then Martin, I don't know if I told you this part, had a conversation with Tasmin, and Tasmin was saying like, I did mention it, that she thinks that, a baby would have saved their relationship, or that she was, ready to start a family type of thing. So it's like I just get chills thinking about like, you were trying to bring life into this world with this man, yet he ends up dead. Now you are, you've mothered a child, whether it's Steven or the other man's, child. Now both of them are dead. And I'm like, so regardless of who is the father, both of them are dead now.
Yeah, what was the point?
Like, what?
You did all of this for what?
To me, was you finding out you were pregnant not, a sign to maybe stop the plan if you could devised one to kill Steven? Like, was that not a, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What really is the most bizarre thing of me is her parents don't think that she was involved. But still.
And, I'm like, when people are involved in crimes and their families don't see it and the facts are right in front of them, the blinders really just blow my mind. I'm like, wake up and smell the coffee, people.
Literally wake up and smell the coffee because it's strong. Do you have any thoughts to share about Tasmin? Y'all, like I said, we, will likely hear an update on this case after April 28th, and trust and believe, I'm following close. I don't think Tasmin should get out of jail, if I haven't made that clear. I don't think 10 years was long enough. If you want to be honest, like, I could even see Callum, being up for parole. The way Tasmin was, out, I'm like, it scares me. I'm like, I'll be interested to see if Callum will be up for parole before his time is up, if he get out of that prison contraband business.
No. I have no words for Tasmin, literally. She deserves no breath out of my body. Hate her.
Scum. Scum. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Point of No Return. We'll keep you updated on what happens with Tasmin. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, leave us comments wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit our website, see all of the projects, episodes, and things that we have in play. And as always, catch us on the socials, keeping the conversation going with some live updates. I'm Michelle Graham.
And I'm Amanda Washington.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Audio Jungle.